and welcome to So Many Games, independent video game coverage from a passionate group of people. Please check out everything we do at somanygames.co.uk. My name is Jason, and for episode 18 of the podcast, we speak with veteran game developer Stephen ter Heide. He spent some time working for PlayStation on the Killzone franchise and on Horizon Zero Dawn for Guerrilla Games, before making the jump to indie games. In our chat, we delve slightly into Stephen's past and why he made that jump from AAA gaming to mostly discussing Wild Sheep Studios' first game, Adorable Adventures. Why did they choose a boar as the main protagonist? How difficult was it to program the smelling mechanic? And what challenges it brought are just some of the topics we cover. But before we get into the interview, I would just like to mention our Patreon. If you would like to support us, this would be the best way to do it. With just 2 tiers to choose from and a host of benefits waiting, it's the perfect time to join in. From early access to our work to a chance to write an article for the newsletter, we hope there is something for everyone. With our lowest tier at £1 and our top at £4.50, we hope we've made our Patreon as accessible as possible. A massive thank you goes out to our current patrons, John, Ruz, Keris, Antonia, Shy Guy, Brian, Opera Queen, and we welcome in new patron, Sai. You guys rule, and we are incredibly lucky to have your support. Please check out patreon.com/somanygames to see everything we have to offer. A link can be found in the show description. If supporting us monetarily isn't right for you right now, and you still like to help, then a glorious 5-star rating and review would be amazing. And please tell anyone you think that would be interested in our work. We would really, really appreciate it. Okay, with all that said, let's jump into my conversation with Stephen on Adorable Adventures.
Stephen ter Heide, born and raised in Amsterdam, and I've been making games professionally now for well over 20 years. I am now creative director at Wild Sheep Studio in France, so I'm a Dutchman in France. My latest game is Adorable Adventures, and that's the one that kind of brought us together talking about it.
What is it like being a Dutchman in France, Stephen?
It's nice. I think being a Dutchman anywhere is kind of a culture shock for the people around you mostly. Dutch people are known to be direct and speak their mind and just be open and wanting to have a discussion about things. And I think in pretty much all of our surrounding countries, that's not essentially the case. So it's always a bit of a culture shock, mostly for them. And for us, I think, for me personally, I really enjoy being here. It's about 7 years now that I landed here, and right from the get-go, I mean, just the environment, the place where you actually live, and this is where people go on holiday, and this is where kind of you have everything from. If you enjoy nature, this is a dream come true. You have very nice places to explore with the forest and all that sort of stuff. So just from kind of a living perspective, it's amazing. And then there are the typical French things. So yeah, we take a lot of time for lunch. You have to get used to it, but once you get used to it and you get into the rhythm, it is really nice. And you just take 2 hours for lunch, and you enjoy, and you talk, and then you get back to work, and then it's all fine. But yeah, that's not something that I was used to. So all of that stuff takes time to get used to. And I think that whole French thing of laissez-faire and tomorrow is another day and that sort of stuff, you kind of have to go with the flow, and then it's fine.
That sounds great. We British people need to take up this 2-hour lunch break thing. Sounds great.
It is.
But yeah, you mentioned about Wild Sheep Studio just there, studio that you founded. Is that right?
No, it was already there. So it was founded by Michel Ancel and Céline Tellier. Michel has left in 2020, and Celine's the only founding member who's left. So I run the studio with her, basically. She's the CEO and does art direction, and I do all of the creative direction and producing. And we're basically a small team now, so everybody's wearing lots and lots of hats. So whatever needs doing, we do it.
And obviously you spent quite a chunk of your career in AAA gaming, like with PlayStation, with the Killzone series, and with Guerrilla Games, with Horizon Zero Dawn. Like, what was it What was it like for you coming from that kind of environment to like indie games?
It's more different than I expected in a lot of ways, in a sense that, I mean, in the early days, when I just started at Gorilla, it was still a relatively small team. So you would still kind of get to be hands on with a lot of things. You would still kind of be involved in a lot of things. And as kind of the teams grow, there's more and more distance. There's more and more layers of management that get added because, well, I mean, basically, you need specialists to do specific jobs, and they're much better at it than a generalist. And so you get more and more of these different jobs, and that's when you get further and further removed from actually being hands on and doing things yourself. And that's something that I really missed. So I spent a lot of time at Gorilla. I think it was 13, 14 years that I spent over there, working on a lot of different games, and that was great. And I just had to leave to do something else because I could see after Horizon Zero Dawn was finished that, okay, that's going to be the next decade of my life, is going to redo the same things and not be involved as much in the hands-on perspective. So I really wanted to change that. And the way to do it, I thought, was, well, I want to go back to smaller teams, be more involved myself. And all of that has panned out and all of that is working for me. But then, of course, there's also all of the conveniences that come with being a big AAA studio, and part of a platform holder is you have access to marketing departments and QA departments. And if you need something on social media, I mean, there's people for everything. So that's really useful because you have a lot of kind of firing power and you can get a lot of done because you can delegate a lot of that stuff. And there's a lot of specialist knowledge that is out there, and these people have it. And now you're on your own. You have to fend for yourself. And all of that specialist knowledge, I've never had to engage with specifically how does social media work? How do you get people to notice you? What do you need to do for that? And, well, basically, you look to the left, you look to the right. Nobody's doing it. Guess I'm doing it. So there's a lot of that. And I think that was a bit of a gap of stuff coming from AAA that I didn't necessarily already know, and I could transfer immediately to D&D space.
That's been quite fun in some ways, though, learning all that kind of stuff.
I love learning all the new stuff. It's just when you're pressed for time and you have kind of this huge list of other things to do, and you're just trying to figure out, okay, so this marketing thing, Steam, how does that work? Actually, I've never published a game on Steam. What are the hoops you have to jump through? And even kind of shipping games on Adorable launched on PlayStation and Xbox as well. So I figured, that's going to be, I've shipped games before on PlayStation. I know that's how to do that. But then you look at the back end, and in honesty, in my AAA days, I looked at that back end for Sony for submitting builds like maybe once every 5 years, because that's the rhythm of shipping a game. So you're just completely out of your depth. You're looking at the thing going, I need to click what? Where? How? What is this process?
Yeah.
So you need to learn all of those things. And, basically, it's fire and forget because you learn them. And then the day after, it's useless information because you don't have to do it again. So you kind of pick up a lot of these things. But yeah, there's such a wealth of information out there right now. If you look at how to market a game from Chris Rogowski, who's super well known in the indie space about everything Steam and how it works and what you need to do and which numbers you need to hit. And you get super obsessed with all of those things. But at the same time, you kind of have to take a step back and say, what do we need? How does it work for us? And I think balancing that kind of what do I need to learn and what is really applicable for me, I think that is still kind of the biggest thing. And I think a lot of indies still struggle with that because there's no recipe for making games. There's no recipe for success. And you see all these stories on YouTube or whatever with people saying, oh, my game did amazingly well and it's because of these and these reasons. But those conditions and recreating those is very, very difficult. And I think you're just trying to find something that works for you. And I think having that experience from working in games in general, not necessarily AAA, but just working in games, kind of, okay, yes, it's great that we see so much enthusiasm, but we need to just bring it down a notch. And if people are negative, it's not being down all of a sudden. You just need to pump it up a little bit. So keeping that balance is something that is really helpful.
It'd be rude of me not to ask you while I have the opportunity. But obviously, Horizon Zero Dawn was released in 2017, obviously after Breath of the Wild. And obviously there was a lot of comparisons between the two. What was it like in the offices when people started getting to play Breath of the Wild and kind of see the similarities between that game and your game, and the fact that you couldn't climb in Horizon.
Yes. Well, I mean, similarities, there are not that many similarities. I mean, if you look at the core of the game, I think Zelda is at its heart as a different game. It's trying to do a lot more with kind of freedom and open-endedness and systemic kind of gameplay. It's less about the narrative. It's less about kind of, okay, world building and those sort of things. It's more giving that freedom to go and explore. I think Horizon started from a different place. It started more in kind of a fantasy of what if robot dinosaurs roamed the earth, and the whole journey to the west kind of story, and saying, okay, how does that fit? How can we tell something that's interesting while keeping that? I think one of the first concept arts that we had was kind of robotic dinosaurs and then a group of hunters and kind of almost looking prehistoric like. That just immediately said, okay, that looks super interesting. How do we tell a story around that? So I think it started from a very different place than say Zelda. I think Zelda was more going back to their systemic roots of the first Zelda and saying, how do we reinvent kind of that openness of the first Zelda, and how do we take it from there? I do think, I mean, obviously we look at, as game developers, we play so many different games. So every new game that comes out, we devour it, and it's very funny because the way we play games, and it's sometimes a bit shocking for new people who see kind of game developers pick up a game, is they're looking at the seams of a texture and they're kind of inspecting the floor and walking very kind of slowly to just see how did they pull off this trick, or how does this trick work. So not actually playing the game, but more trying to analyze it and understand it, and not getting the full experience of it. So yeah, we analyze everything. So obviously at Guerrilla also we played a lot of games, Zelda, and I think for one of the inspirations for Killzone, we played a lot of Resident Evil 4 at that time, and also King Kong. Which had kind of the more diegetic environment. So I think there's always influences you take from different games. But obviously, we had no idea Zelda was being worked on. So there's no kind of comparison or anything to take from that. I think it was more a case of, okay, who's going to take home all of the Game of the Year awards? That's going to be Breath of the Wild.
Oh, yeah.
amazing game.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, no, I was intrigued. Just wondering, but yeah, let's get rid of all the AAA stuff. We don't want to talk about that anymore. Let's talk about the important stuff, and that's the indie games. And obviously, as you've mentioned, Wild Sheep Studios, Indie Game Studio, and like Adorable Adventures just been released. But why Adorable Adventures? Where did the idea come from, and what made you decide to make this type of game?
So when Wild Sheep was founded, the original game that it was kind of assigned to build was Wild. This was the original kind of game that was announced by PlayStation back in 2014, I think. It was 14, a little bit later perhaps. So that game was basically a huge open world, very ambitious game, very systemic, very much about procedural generation and playing with systems and being more of a natural world. And playing with animals and all those sort of things. So in kind of the team that we recruited, there were a lot of people who had kind of those type of ambitions to build those type of games. So I think it's kind of in the DNA of the studio to want to do those sort of things. Now, obviously, the team grew a lot over that period that we developed Wild. I think we grew to about 70 to 75 people. And when Wild was cancelled, that was real heartbreak because we thought we were doing really well. But obviously, there's always external reasons that you can't fully understand why certain things happen. But that meant we had to scale back down the team to right now we're 12 people. So that was very, very tough to do, to say goodbye to people who've become your family as a small group. We're all in this amazing studio, and then all of a sudden kind of the majority of people have to leave. But still that feeling of building games around nature, building games with positivity and systemic games that focus on certain kind of aspects that we don't see too often. And at the same time, we had built up a lot of knowledge around kind of those areas. So we do our own photogrammetry. So we go out into nature and we scan things. We take pictures and all that sort of stuff. And the photographer we have who does that, she also works as a volunteer at a wildlife rescue here in the south of France. and specifically aimed at boars, because boars are hunted and there's often things that happen to boars here in the neighborhood. So if there's small boars or anything, she's the first person they call. So when she brought over one of these small boars, they're so adorable, they're so cute, they're so playful and stubborn and full of life and just kind of super interesting as kind of video game heroes, because they're a little bit clumsy, they're a little bit tough, they're resilient, but they're smart. They learn really quickly, and sometimes they go just 100% in one direction and then just fall over. And it's just really cute to see. So we figured, well, that would make an excellent video game character. So we said, if we have the time with this small team to still build something, what can we build? Let's build a smaller game focused on this little hero. And basically, that's what we set out to do: is build a small game that fits kind of the team that we have. That takes advantage of the knowledge that we've built up over the years of nature and how to build kind of these ambiences and these moods and that sort of thing. Building quadruped controls, like how do you control an animal with 4 legs, which is quite difficult sometimes. So all of that knowledge came in handy and said, okay, let's try and build something that fits what we're able to do. So that's basically the reason why we landed on Boris.
Like you mentioned there about the controlling of Boris. Actually, there's something I didn't actually think about. Obviously, because he's got 4 legs. So was that quite a big challenge for you to get that right?
Absolutely. I mean, it's in most games it's a big challenge, because a lot of the stuff that's out of the box, in particular. So, for example, we're using Unreal 5. And Unreal 5, it's all about meta-human and all of those sort of things, but it's all humans. It's all bipedal. It's all kind of 2 legs. And as soon as you go, well, can we just? It's a great start to have all of that, but now we have 4 legs, and that means if you go up a hill or go up a ledge, now all of a sudden, kind of what do those legs do? How does the body move and all of those sort of things get very, very different. Same for, oh no, I have to jump. Okay, so at what time is the jump validated? If the front legs are there and the hind legs aren't, how does all of that work? How does the capsule move? Because it's not a thing that stands up; it's a thing that is elongated. So how does that kind of move through the environment? So there's lots of different problems from controlling a 4-legged. If you turn, it's not a turn on the spot as you would do with kind of a 2-legged creature that they could just kind of step and then turn. But now it's 4 legs. So do the front legs first move, and is there a bend? So there's lots of interesting problems of controlling a 4-legged creature. So I think that is something that, well, we learned a lot about it from kind of our previous experiences. So we were able to take that into Unreal. But basically, we built our own character controller. We built our own way of making that work, because out of the box, there's very little that supports it.
Yeah, it's really interesting. Like I said, it didn't even occur to me that would be such a big part of the development to get that right. And like, was there any other challenges of having Boris as your main protagonist through development of the game?
Well, I mean, not necessarily Boris. I mean, as soon as being a quadruped, I think that is the biggest challenge of just controlling him. But then also we have to look at, okay, so what does he actually do? What do we intuitively, what do we know as humans? What do we think that a boar is good at? And well, that's his nose. It's a very prominent feature. We always see them kind of sniffing around and rooting around. So, okay, how do we build a mechanic around that? How do we imagine that could work? So it's not necessarily Boris himself, but it's more of, okay, we have this creature. It has a personality. It has movement. What does he do? What are his capabilities? And there's very often in a lot of games, there's anthropomorphization going on, where they're kind of going, oh, let's give him a voice, let's give him a silly hat and a tie, and he can talk to other creatures and all those sort of things, which is fine. But that's not the game that we wanted to build. We wanted to have something that feels a lot more natural and realistic. So how do we still make that work? Because we still want to tell a story, and we still want him to have an interesting adventure and use his capacities. So what are his capacities? What can you naturally do as a boar? So it's more around those kind of questions that it becomes kind of, okay, so how do we come up with all of that stuff? How do we make that interesting?
And obviously, you mentioned the spelling mechanic, and I definitely want to get to that in a minute. But I'm just gonna squeeze in a question from the Discord. Actually, one of the members of our community came up with a question that he wanted you to answer. And this question comes from Brian, and he wondered, when making a game like Adorable Adventures, how do you balance creating a setting that both invites players to explore without making it too obvious what is the stuff you want them to find while exploring?
Yeah, no, that's a very good question actually, and it's one of the things that's a very delicate balance to get right because visually, and one of the things we aimed for in making the forest and making the environments is immersion. We really wanted you to be in that place and to have that feeling, oh, I can just leave the pad and feel like I'm in a forest. But if you look at a real forest, it's so dense. There's so much stuff. So how do you instinctively know what to look for? What do you need? What are barriers? You have to be able to read the environment to make any sort of level design and challenge in it. So I think we had it relatively easy in the sense that we decided the game would be all about discovery. And discovery means that it's okay to have a little bit noise, to have a little bit of density on the screen, but you still need to discern things. And discerning came from using your nose. So even though visually, yes, you can see the plants, they're all there. You can see the mushrooms, you can see all of those things if you just go by eyes and you have learned the visual pattern of what they look like. And you know a little bit about kind of the rules, because that's the other anchor that we have as humans. When we walk in nature, we know that under trees we can find mushrooms, or these paths, they always look like this. So there's certain things that we know, that we remember, that we've internalized. So we can count on all of that because the game also uses those rules. So we know where things need to grow. Oh, it's always going to be in the sunshine if I'm looking for flowers. Oh, it's always going to be there. So that's helpful, but still, kind of the visual noise that's there. Having your nose is super easy to actually follow. And that's where it becomes your secret weapon, because you're not just trusting your eyes, you're actually having this great tool to help you find things. So I think having that discovery as a pillar and not being afraid to say, "Oh, let's hide things." It's okay, because in the end, you always have your secret weapon to fall back to. So even if you don't know where to go, even if you feel lost, you activate your nose, and it leads you where you want. It may not lead you where you want to go, but it will lead you somewhere. And I think that is something that is very nice, and I think that is something that is part of the game and part of the experience of being Boris. So for us, we had a kind of a secret weapon to deal with that situation of the visual noise versus making it readable. And there's lots of tricks a lot of games use, but we didn't have to use kind of those type of tricks to get that balance right.
Yeah, I mean, that was one of the things that I really took away from the game when I played it, was like how full, the screen was of the forest. It did feel very, very realistic, and there was never a point where I played it and thought, oh, that doesn't look quite right, or, in real life that wouldn't be like that or anything there. It seemed like you guys put a lot of work and effort into making sure that the environment in the game was as realistic and and full as possible.
Yeah, no, that was very important to us because, I mean, basically, when we like hiking and the environments around here are amazing. So you do hikes and you see lots of stuff on your hikes, but then recreating that one by one, I mean, there are there are boring parts of the hike where you're just kind of moving along, but then you open up and you have a nice vista, and then there's a special moment. And what we wanted to do is condense these moments and more about kind of how we remember those moments than recreating them one by one. So we didn't want to just take a place and say, okay, this looked like this, so let's make it like that. It's more about kind of what is the feeling that it gave us? How did we? So it's not the picture and recreating that picture. It's kind of the image that's in your mind of how it felt, and how it felt. When you think about that, it adds so much more, because now the light becomes more saturated. You remember the smells that you had and say, oh, but yeah, I think there was dust in the air, and I think there was this, and I think it becomes more idyllic and more nostalgia fed. So I think those things help in making the environment feel not necessarily realistic, but feels like, yeah, this is a place I could have visited, and it feels sort of nice and real.
Yeah, for if I can remember correctly, like managed to even get like moss on bark of trees and stuff like that, which I just thought was like a really nice touch.
Those sort of details, I think, is really important also because you're looking at the world from a different perspective, from the perspective of a small creature. So things that the larger scale are not that important. It's more important that it's very dense and all the things up close to you are very detailed and have enough to have visual interest. I think that was something that we paid a lot of attention to.
Yeah, no, and I really appreciate it as a player. Just really, it's those little touches that just really make a big difference sometimes. But we've obviously alluded to the smelling mechanic in the game, and I really obviously want to get into that because it was a much more bigger element of the game than I think I was expecting when I came into starting to play the game. So I obviously knew it was there beforehand, but I didn't really realise how much of a pivotal role it played in the gameplay. Which isn't a bad thing. It was great. I really enjoyed the whole thing. And you've obviously said it was because of the boar's great sense of smell in real life, which is what made it such a big part of the game. But in the game, it like you can be following one scent, but then you could pick up another scent, which is the whole thing behind it, isn't it? It's like you've kind of got to smell enough and find enough items to be able to forget the sense, the smell, so you can concentrate on finding your siblings. But I was really impressed on how well it worked, and I could think that it must have been really hard to implement this into the game and make it work as well as it does. Because to me, I was like, this must have been just a real pain in the backside to work on, and I guess I was right on that.
Absolutely. It's taken a lot of playtesting and a lot of things that didn't work to finally land on, okay, this has enough depth in it, because it's not just, there's so many different aspects of it. It is that feeling of, okay, can I follow a trail? How do I see the trail? How does it lead me and not lead me at the same time? Is it very detailed? Do I have to follow the trail exactly? How do other trails kind of intervene? Do I see other trails? All of that sort of stuff, all those questions take a lot of work to figure out what works and what are the signs and feedbacks that people need to be able to make sense of it, of what they're seeing, and to make it feel natural. And obviously, when you see kind of things in cartoons where kind of a cartoon character is carried by the scent of fresh apple pie, and this kind of this waft of scent going through the air. It's like, that looks cool. Okay, but how do we translate it into game? How do we make it more of a challenge? Because if it's just following a trail, that doesn't work. So we need to have some sort of mechanics to add some depth to it. So you have to stay close to the trail. So now it's more about navigating and not losing the trail. And what happens if you do lose it? What happens if can you get interrupted? How does that work? Are there different intensities, or is it more distance based, or is it more what are kind of the factors that influence what you're smelling right now? And how do you decide what you want to smell? And I think a lot of people at the start of the game, they were thinking that they could select what they wanted to smell, instead of saying, no, actually, you can't select, because if I'm in the natural world, I can't decide what I want to smell. Whatever is dominant in the air, that's what you're going to smell. And you may not like it, but that's what you're smelling. So we wanted to stick with that. But then it became the whole thing of, okay, so if we give people an idea of all the scents that are in the area, how do we convince them that they can't select anything? They can't select the scent that they want. They have to learn that these are the scents that are there, and it's in order. These are the most intense ones, and then the weaker ones, and it's all layers, and you have to remove those layers. You have to know the scent well enough to be able to filter it out and move to the next one. And I think that's where a lot of the work has gone in. And I don't think it's 100% clear for everybody, but it's clear enough so that it doesn't get in the way of you playing. So even if people don't fully understand the system, they're still able to get to the end of the game. They're still able to have fun and enjoy it. But obviously, those people who really find out, this system, how does this work, and they get to play with it, they have a different type of experience with it.
I mean, I personally, I really liked it. It kind of clicked with me straight away. And like, one of the things I really liked about it was the fact that it was kind of like a guide for me to it kind of just took me around the whole environment and showed me all these little things without me having to overly worry too much about missing stuff. And I really liked that. it kind of fed into my inquisitive nature when, I really like exploration in video games. So being able to, all of a sudden I'm following this scent, but then all of a sudden this new one comes in. I'm like, oh, okay, cool. Well, forget that one. I'm going to go and see what this one is and where it's going to take me. And so was that just kind of like an added bonus after putting this smelling mechanic in, or was that kind of in the back of your brain as well, that would be the case?
No, absolutely. This was a conscious decision to say, okay, this is part of the gameplay that you get distracted all the time. The amount of distraction, how often it happens, all those sort of things, we can play with that. I think so in the opening of the game, it's a lot more calm. You're not as distracted as much by different scents. There's, I think, one or two hijacks that are very prominent. We call them hijacks when kind of another scent appears. But if you get, for instance, into the forest, it's very dense. There's lots of different, and so it's constantly you're smelling something new, smelling something new, smelling something new, and you're kind of going like, "What's happening?" But that feeling is something we really wanted to create because we thought, okay, so if you're a young animal and you're learning about these things, how overwhelming must it be if you have such a powerful nose and you can smell anything and everything in the environment? How do you know what's useful? How do you kind of filter out all of those things? So we figured that really kind of works for being a young animal, and it works for his personality of being easily distracted, and it's okay to be distracted, but gradually he's learning and he's growing up, and this fits with you being able to then filter out certain scents and becoming more and more aware and attuned to your environment. So I think it was it's a conscious decision of how do we implement something that fits the arc of the character as well.
And like obviously the gating off of certain areas depending on how many siblings you've collected. That was kind of a cool little moment as well. And having to charge at those blockades to break it free. Was that something that came on later in the development, or
I think it came relatively early on. I mean, obviously the key mechanic is being able to use your nose. But then it's also about, okay, how do you move through the environment? What are your capacities? What else can you do? Because you need some obstacles, you need something to say, okay, if you're just following a path, how do we make that more interesting following that path? Can you move quickly and follow that path? And when we started looking at, well, if we look at the real life boars that are there, and they can barely contain themselves as they're running. They don't know their speed yet. They don't know kind of how their legs are working yet. And it's just so much fun to watch them spin out of control, but just going at it. And we thought, well, that's great. We need to have something where you can just run, and it has to deliberately feel a little bit kind of out of control, that he's going faster than he really should be going. And that obviously led into him bumping into a lot of walls in kind of early tests where you're just trying to, okay, is this fun? And we said, yeah, this is fun. And let's make bumping into walls a thing that they do. Because obviously already boars, they like pushing things over and rooting with their nose and all those sort of things. And they're surprisingly sturdy. And so we said, okay, let's make charging and bumping into things. Let's make that part of the package of what it's like to be this young boar. Because they're very playful, but they're very strong as well. So that's where that came from. And then if we looked at the world and we said, okay, I think in one of the earlier versions of the game that we had, the world was a lot more open and there was less kind of gating and obstacles. And it was very overwhelming for players to kind of go, okay, so where do I need to go if I can go anywhere? It felt more open, but also more unguided and more kind of, okay, so if I can do all of these things out of order, they sort of lose track of what it is that they wanted to do. So having some sort of gating and saying, okay, well, actually, you need to accomplish certain tasks. It's still relatively open, but it gives you access to new things, and we can sort of pace it a little bit better. And also, it lines up with the overall objective that you have of freeing your mother, which requires a certain number of siblings to help free. So now, kind of with these additional barriers that are in the world, you kind of have a sense of progress as well, saying, oh, but now I have 4 of my siblings with me. So, okay, in the back of my mind, I know I'm at 4 and I need to be at 7. So it all kind of goes back and it all links to that's at least the feeling that we want to create. You can never be sure that it arrives that way, but that's what we had in mind.
And obviously there's been a lot of talk about the siblings, and that's the main aim of the game, is just to find all your siblings so you can go and free your mum. But one of the other things that I quite liked about the game was that, once you find your sibling, there's some kind of task that you need to complete to be able to get that sibling to agree to join you, which again took me by surprise, but in a good way, because I was just, when I was going for that first sibling, I just thought, oh, it's just a case of finding them, they're going to join me, and then we'll move on to the next one. So, I did enjoy that kind of element of like, right, well, cool, you found your sibling, but now you've got to find a glowing flower to help them get out the dark cave or something like that. Yeah, that was just a really fun element of the game. I mean, I guess that was always part of the plan, but did it ever evolve from the basic ideas?
Well, I think that it came along with the idea of wanting to tell a story, and so there's a story there, and the story is very much kind of is rooted in Boris's personality and the way that he moves and the way that he has his own kind of will. And that is through his sounds and the way he sits and all those sort of things. And we said, well, if he has family, then obviously that, like our families, they're not all the same. They have to be differences. Each of them have their own kind of specific things that they like. There's one who just likes food. There's another one who's lazy. There's another one who's always exploring. So they have kind of these personalities, and that makes it feel more like a whole family and a unique creature, each of them. Once we settled on that, is okay. So how do we bring that into a story? How do we make that happen? Because we still want the player to be the driving force and maybe making the decisions. And when they're running through the world, all the siblings should be running. They're not off doing their own thing. They should be with you, but yeah, their personality should shine through a little bit. So that comes into the setting and the problem that they have that you need to solve for them. So that tells you a little bit about their personality. And then also we try to add kind of little touches with little animations and behaviors that they do when you're not doing anything. So I think one of the best things that we're seeing right now from players is Gary, the first brother that you find, who's a little lazy one, and he falls down asleep as soon as he can. And he's become a bit of a fan favorite, where people are just focusing on, oh, he's doing all sorts of things. They're projecting a lot of trouble that is caused in the game. They're projecting it onto Gary because he's a menace, he's a liability, he's not behaving, and it's fun. It's what we wanted to have, kind of these personalities around you. So I think it all came from wanting to tell a story and creating that family, which each of them a unique personality, and that's where kind of these situations basically came from.
Great name for a boar, by the way, Gary. Absolutely love it. Great. Who came up with that one?
Well, actually, it's funny because we're a French company, so the majority of people here are French, and so they have a completely different frame of reference to certain names or to certain things. So Gary really came from Garrigue, which is kind of an area here in the south of France,
okay,
where there's a lot of boars and other things. And it's like, yeah, Gary is fun. It's like, well, okay, if that works for you guys, I'm fine to go with Gary. It's a little bit out there, but it might work.
No, it's great. I love it. I love that there's a Gary in the game. It's brilliant. And obviously, you obviously squeezed in a little like video game thing with putting one behind a waterfall.
Yeah. I mean, it's if you have a waterfall, you have to do something with it.
Exactly.
So
it's always disappointing these days when you find a waterfall and there's just a brick wall behind it. Like, come on, you know the rules.
Yeah. Exactly. It's a little remark from Maxime also, because you can go into the waterfall or behind the waterfall and go into the cave, but then on the second level, you can also pass behind the waterfall. And there's a little remark from Maxime where he goes, well, there might be treasure behind the waterfall, but this isn't a video game.
Yeah. And obviously, while we're still on the siblings, when you finish the task that's been set and the siblings are like, yep, cool, I'm going to join in and help you. And then they stay with you for the rest of the game. Obviously, that's they're all controlled by the system. What was it like for you trying to program that into the game Because again, like with the spelling mechanic, when I was playing the game, I was thinking, I can see this being a bit of a nightmare for them.
Yeah. No, there's still work ongoing right now. We're still kind of working on improving the game because the siblings they can be out of control. It's fun when they're out of control in a good way. It's not so fun if they're just messing up your gameplay. So that's something that we don't want to have happen. But we want them to behave as a group, but with you still being in the lead. So as you start moving, they should be starting to move and exhibit a little bit of their personality, but not too much. But getting that balance right and making sure that they're not kind of bouncing into walls or doing crazy things or destroying kind of the experience that you're having, that's really difficult to do. And I like kind of how sometimes they bring chaos to the scene. There's lots of instances where we see people playing and they're just trying to do something, and then one of them bumps into a trash can and all the trash comes flying out. It's like, I didn't do this, but my siblings did, and it's that is fun. Those are good moments, but there's also moments where they throw themselves off a bridge, and you kind of go, yeah, that's not supposed to happen. It still works. It doesn't break the system, but just for the story and for the mood, it's not what we want. But there's also great moments, like I'm not sure if they kind of with the whole seesaw thing.
Yes.
That's one of my favorite moments where we go, okay, so yes, I'm using my siblings that are there. I'm on the seesaw, and one of them is jumping and just propelling me through the air, and that feels like a moment like I'm using my siblings. So we're looking at more ways to be able to use the siblings, and that will come in future updates.
Well, whatever you do, please don't patch out the way in which they react to the fire pits, please. I had way too much fun just watching them run into fire and then jump off. It was great.
Yeah, no, that's a joy for a lot of people. So we make sure that we keep some of that. Maybe not all of it. We keep some of it.
Oh, okay. Yeah, please don't take it all out. The game also features narration. It's set as from the aspect of like a park ranger. And that was quite a fascinating ingredient in the game for me. It's kind of like something I thought that elevated the game to a great level. It really helped me personally throughout the game to connect with Boris and what was going on and everything else, and like the little vignettes that they would like say about certain parts of the environment and such. It was quite interesting. But where did the idea of adding this narration like come from? Was it was it always the plan, or did you like halfway through development think, we need a little bit more here? What can we do?
I think having a story was there from the start. We wanted to tell a story, but then we also wanted to keep the animals to be real animals, and that was difficult because there are we look at other solutions, like maybe there's pop-ups, maybe there's little scenes, maybe there's more, but that all becomes very elaborate and very time heavy also to produce all of that stuff. So we said, well, one of the inspiration obviously are BBC documentaries and all that sort of stuff where there's narrators and all of those things. And we said, well, what if we take that approach? So we did a small test because it's about balance. How often does the voice intervene? How prescient is the voice? Does it know everything? Does it kind of already spoil things for you or not? So we had to find kind of the right balance of when does it trigger, how does it trigger, and what is it telling you, so that it's not too kind of in your face and taking you out of the experience, but it feels more meshed together. So landing on kind of this forest guard who is almost telling like a group of visitors. I think it happened when we had a bunch of kids playtesting, and we were telling them about the game. It's like this is what we should be doing. This is the way that you have visitors in the park, and he's just telling this. Okay, there are these wonderful creatures in the forest. I'll tell you a story about one of them, and here's what happened one day. I saw him doing this. I saw him do that, and it's more of kind of observations. And they're still rooted in kind of actual natural behavior. He's not inventing dragons or amazing stories. It's still about, oh, you did something silly. Well, you shouldn't be doing silly stuff. But he's telling it in a way that he's explaining it to visitors. And there's a real connection to nature. And in that way, he becomes like a bridge between the world of the boars and the world of the humans, because he has a lot more knowledge about what happens and how do boars work and what do they know and what is their role in the ecosystem and all those sort of things. And then there's the human world of, okay, there's landmarks, there's a park, there's a forest, there's all of these different things, there's plants, and how does that work? And he's the bridge between those two worlds. And having him comment on that rather than and sharing observations, rather than him leading you and saying, well, this is what has happened and this is what is happening. I think that struck a nice balance into how he was presented in the game.
I really liked it. It never got in the way. It never felt annoying. Like in some games they implement this kind of system and you're like, dude, just shut up. Please. I don't need this right now. I just need to get on with this and that. But I never felt that here in Adorable Adventures. It was
oh, that's good.
Yeah, it was well written and it just felt natural in the game and what I was seeing. It was a good match.
Oh, that's good. That's happy to hear that. It's a difficult balance to get right. I mean, still for some people, it's too much, and they don't enjoy the voice and they want to get it out of the way. But really, after like the initial onboarding, you don't really need it to advance in the game. It's there and it offers kind of observations, but it doesn't intervene as much. It's not always present and always telling you what to do and being a little bit kind of just ever present, basically. That's not happening. So that balance is still hard to get right. So we're still working on that.
And obviously, we mentioned about some of the challenges that you faced already during the development of Adorable Adventures. But was there any other challenges that you really struggled to get right in the game?
The environments and the density and making sure that it all fits together. Getting the distances right between things, because we wanted to have this small world. I think one of the sources of inspiration for this game was A Short Hike, which is a small open world. It's still a little bit gated with kind of the feathers that you need to climb up the mountain, but you have these little activities that are dotted around, and it always felt like, okay, I turn a corner and there's something new for me to do. So being a kind of a small boar and the speed at which you can move through the world, that means everything has to be a lot more condensed than what it would usually be. I mean, if you look at the real life national park this is based on, it's like 3,000 square kilometers. It's like, forget about it. Even as humans, it's too big to kind of comprehend. So we needed something that still felt like we could add enough variety in biomes that you would still have this sensation of traveling, that you would still have landmarks so you could kind of make out where you are and where things are in relationship to each other, but also that was still manageable to kind of traverse. So it's not too far. You could still get to some place and feel like you're visiting and discovering a new spot. So that balance took a lot of kind of bigger, smaller, bigger, smaller. But yeah, that's in the early phases. But obviously, as soon as you start kind of shaping in the terrain, that gets a lot more cumbersome. If you kind of go, well, actually, it would be great if we could move that mountain just a little bit over there. It's like, oh no, that's way too much work because everything has to move with it, and then kind of but there's a river and there's the waterfall, and how does that? So it gets a lot more kind of tricky to move things once they're set in stone, literally. So I think that was one of the challenges, is to find kind of the right distances and getting the right variety. And I think for us, building the demo that we did was a great kind of warm up to building the rest of the game. Even though we already had kind of the rough layout of what we wanted to do. So in the demo, you can already see kind of the environments. They're not exactly the same as they are in the full game, but you can only see kind of a big part of it. But building that environment where a lot of people were saying, it feels like it's too small, or it feels like it's too big. It doesn't have enough kind of content in it. Do you feel do you have that sense of exploration and always being distracted and finding the next thing? And I think seeing people play the demo and the response to that and say, well, actually, in terms of balance and things that I'm finding, it feels really dense and feels really good. And I can spend, our goal, I think, was about 20 minutes that you would kind of be able to play through kind of the quest. And we would see people spending an hour and just trying to collect all of the things and being very completionist about it all and just spending a lot of time in that area. And said, well, that's what we'd love to see. So I think getting that balance right of what is the world, what's the size of it, and I think that was a big challenge, because obviously as soon as you make the later in production you make a move on that, the bigger impact it has, because then all of people have to move things and it becomes a massive nightmare.
I can imagine. Yeah. And like, did all that affect like the game's length? You know, because it's like a couple of hours length in total.
Well, we didn't set out to make a specific length. I think for us, you have something in mind, but I think we looked at the main mechanic and said, okay, it is a gimmick, and a gimmick has a certain lifespan. It will wear out at some point. People will start to feel it's repetitive, start to kind of go, okay, I've seen all it can do. This is fine, and then you need to move on to something new. And in the time that we had, we couldn't fit in again a new feature, a new thing that would fit that. So we said, okay, however long it takes for the fun of this gimmick to wear off, that's what the game is. So we came up with, okay, so what are the complications we can add? So if you're in the ashes, now you can no longer smell. So if you're in the forest, you're constantly distracted. If you're in the highlands, there are kind of big open spaces and you have to follow trails that are relatively short. So you kind of get lost a little bit. So there's these different aspects that we try and feed into it to add a little bit of variety in the actual mechanic. And of course, there's all of the side content. But the main content is dictated by how long can we keep this fun and engaging. And that was the main goal, is to just build a game and said, well, if it's an hour, then it's an hour. If it's 3 hours, great, then it's 3 hours. But we don't want it to overstay its welcome, because it's a one gimmick kind of game. That's what it should stay.
Yeah, that makes sense, and I think you kind of nailed that kind of length perfectly with where it is at the moment. You know, you mentioned that you're still working on the game. You know, what's next for Adorable Adventures?
I think the first thing is we already released one patch with a couple of hot fixes where we didn't think about certain problems. Like, for example, what if you have the demo already installed and you have a save game of the demo, and that save game has the same name as the full game? That doesn't work. That's a problem. So that's a really silly mistake. But that shouldn't happen. So we already fixed kind of those things and the immediate problems that people have with getting stuck in the game or getting stuck in rocks, and all the fun of having your own character controller for a quadruped character. So that was the first thing that we wanted to fix. And there's also lots of questions for people for more quality of life type of features, where they're saying on PC they want to have more features around kind of being able to adjust more kind of the graphics options and say, well, actually, I want it to run like this because I have a machine that is capable of this or that. So they want more options for that. They want a smoother experience when they're clicking through menus. So there's lots and lots of different things where we think, okay, this is going to improve the overall overall kind of experience. Same for a lot of bugs that people are reporting. They're being super nice about it, about bugs that they're finding. We're kind of hands in hair kind of going like, oh no, oh my God, this shouldn't be happening. They're being super nice about it, and they really love the game, and they're there to help us. They help us reproduce bugs and send us videos, and there's all that sort of stuff. So we want to make sure that we fix a ton of those issues as well, so people have a smoother experience and they're not taken out of it as much. So that's all part of this first update. But then there's a lot of other ideas that we had for side activities that you can do, maybe different stories that we can tell. So I don't want to go too much into I don't want to make any false promises, but yeah, we're definitely not abandoning the game. We want to add a lot more content to it.
Yeah, that's exciting. I'm excited to see what plans you've got when they come to fruition. And just to end, Stephen, can you explain your game in just one word?
I would have to go with adorable.
I should have seen that coming. Actually,
I think we landed on adorable because also it's a French word.
Okay.
And it has a slightly different meaning than it does in English. It's not as kind of cutesy, all cuddly, sweet. It's more kind of something that is adorable. It's kind of it's nice. It's cozy. It's has a slightly different meaning. So yeah, in French it was very natural for everybody to say, well, it's adorable. It's like, maybe that's too sweet, but let's go with it because, well, it's a French company and we're making a French game. And this little guy here, this plushie of Boris, he's adorable.
He is.
It works every time we show it somewhere. The first word out of people's mouth is, I can see why it's called adorable.
Yeah, definitely.
We'll stick with it.
Yeah, you can't help but fall in love with Boris.
That's something that we really appreciate, and it's worked really well.
It was such fun speaking with Stephen, a true character, and he revealed such interesting insights into game development and Adorable Adventures. Speaking of which, Adorable Adventures is now out on PC and consoles, and if you want to keep up to date with Stephen and Wild Sheep Studio, then you can follow them on Bluesky or Instagram, or please go and visit their website. Links to all these will be in the show description. And before I leave you, I would just like to remind you all that we have a Discord server where you can chat to the So Many Games crew and other like-minded people on video games, life and our work. We'd love for you to be a part of our community, so do come and say hello and let us know what you've been playing. Don't forget to check out somanygames.co.uk, which is full of amazing reviews, articles and interviews, and stick around to the very end of this podcast outro to catch some messages from our fellow creator friends. Thank you for listening, and until next time, please take care out there and happy gaming.
How some games don't need 100 hours to leave a mark?
Absolutely. I'm Michael.
And I'm Marcus. We're the host of Tiny Game Chronicles, a podcast that celebrates games that are small in scope, but huge in heart.
Every other week, we dive into games that you can finish in a few hours, but think about for days after.
We've been exploring these hidden gems, and every time it feels like uncovering something extraordinary.
So whether you're short on time or just love discovering new worlds, join us.
Listen to Tiny Game Chronicles on your favorite podcast app, or catch us on YouTube.
Tiny Game Chronicles, where every other week we discuss games that are quick plays,
but epic journeys.